there are different types of assessment depending on how you want to assess and what you're going to use the results for. So this PowerPoint is about those different types of assessments. So the first type of assessment is norm referenced versus criterion referenced. You need to make a choice between the two of these. And essentially, you're going to either compare students to each other or to a group, a normed group, or the average of a group. That's norm referenced. And criterion referenced is comparing students to a set standard. So they need to pass at 80%, or they need to correctly answer 8 of the 10 questions. Whereas norm reference would be the score is based on compared to an average, or you're comparing to each other and ranking students. So norm reference versus criterion referenced. You can read the other similarities and differences, or the comparison between the two, in this slide. Another type of assessment comparison is informal versus formal. So informal assessments are those unplanned assessments, in the moment, spur of the moment assessments. Students are working in a group and I observe what they're doing, or I assign a task and I'm not really looking at how they're doing on the task, but I'm observing their thinking process, or I'm reading their journals and I might choose a journal to look at more carefully. So it's unplanned, spur of the moment. Formal assessments are those planned out assessments. We're going to take a spelling quiz, you're going to write a paper, you're doing this project for me to grade. So those planned out assessments, I know I want to look for something specific and I have a grading key or a rubric or some formalized way to assess. Another differentiation to make, or choice to make, is traditional assessment versus authentic assessment. And the difference between these two is traditional is very school-based, content-based, whereas authentic is more related to the real world. So what people in the real world, if they weren't sitting in a school or in a classroom, how they would show that they know how to do something. For example, most people do not take multiple choice quizzes outside of a classroom. Cosmo maybe, but really multiple choice quizzes are not part of people's normal lives outside of school. However, writing a letter, writing a resume, creating a play, acting out a play, creating a budget, spending money at a store, balancing a checkbook, those are things people do in real life. So there's a spectrum or a range of where these fall, but traditional is school-based in a classroom, what is only relatable to the classroom. Authentic is related to the real world. Another group of types of assessment is standardized versus teacher-developed. So standardized can mean the standardized test at the end of the school year, I-STEP tests, and of course assessments. It can also mean those tests that come with the state-mandated curriculum or the textbook, something that all students who are in that grade level, in that district, or in that state, or in the U.S., they're all taking the same assessment, and it has a standard way of grading that assessment. Whereas teacher-developed is exactly that, an assessment that's developed by a teacher for his or her classroom that relates directly to what has been going on in that classroom. Other students outside that classroom probably are not taking that teacher-developed test because it is developed by the 4th grade teacher at South Wayne Elementary for her classroom. So that's the difference between standardized and teacher-developed. Another category of assessment is formative versus summative. Formative asks, how are you doing? It's an assessment given by a teacher to form an opinion about student progress. Are students understanding? Do I need to go back and reteach it? So forming that assessment, how close are they getting to understanding this? Have they mastered it? To what level have they mastered the content? Whereas summative asks, how did you do? So summative is summing up the learning, happens at the end of learning, and provides the sum of what students have learned. So you can see that if you have a formative assessment, it's probably going to be more bite-sized chunks, individual pieces, smaller assessments, where summative tend to be bigger assessments, larger assessments, more encompassing, sort of like the cumulative finals that you might have at the end of a course. So one is forming your opinion and one is summing up what students have learned.